Hello, my name is Melissa Silverstein. On behalf of Barnard College and Women in Hollywood, it is my honor to welcome you to the 11th Annual Athena Film Festival. This festival is dedicated to celebrating the stories of bold, courageous women leaders and the filmmakers who bring these stories to life. Thank you for joining us. I am Melissa Silverstein, the artistic director and co-founder of the festival, and I'm also the founder and publisher of Women and Hollywood. This year's festival would not be possible without the support of our dedicated sponsors. Please join me in thanking Athena's founding sponsor, the Artemis Rising Foundation, and its CEO, Regina K. Scully, whose visionary leadership makes our work possible. A special thank you as well to our premier level sponsor, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which shares our commitment to showcasing the stories of women in science. To all of our sponsors, whose names you will see before each film and event, thank you for your commitment to challenging our culture to be more inclusive and inspiring audiences in the process. We are so excited for this year's festival, and it coincides finally with Women's History Month. And today's conversation, Girls' Rights in the Pandemic, is in partnership with the amazing organization Equality Now and is part of our International Women's Day program. This is about girls. So girls across the globe have been devastated by the pandemic. Rising rates of sexual violence, child marriage, female genital mutilation, and sexual exploitation have been described as a shadow pandemic. This discussion will forefront the people on the front lines of the global fight for the future of girls. And this conversation is also in conjunction with the film A Life Too Short. I'm so excited to introduce the moderator for this panel, Yasmine Hassan. She is the first person who came to mind when I was thinking about this panel. She is on the forefront of pushing these issues, and I'm honored that she is joining us. Yasmine Hassan is the Global Executive Director of Equality Now, an international human rights organization which uses legal advocacy to protect and promote women and girls' rights. A feminist since the age of 10, she is dedicated to the cause of gender equality, and she believes the first step to achieving it is equal treatment under the law. She has appeared in numerous media outlets to address the global situation of women. Thank you so much for being here, Yasmine, and for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that amazing introduction. I'm so excited to be part of the film festival this year, and so excited to have these 4 wonderful and amazing activist women on the front lines in this panel to moderate. So just as way of background, I'm the Global Executive Director of Equality Now, as Melissa said. I'm very excited to wish you a happy International Women's Day today. And I think today is a day of hope. It's a day as we pledge to build our world back to be fairer, more equal, and more just. And women's rights are the center of that. At Equality Now, unfortunately, in the last year, we have seen the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women and girls. You know, we have always been in the business as nonprofit, in the business of getting out of business. And I was really hoping we were close. And I think this pandemic has really set us back. Some of the things that we have seen in the past year is that girls' education has been halted, sometimes permanently. This has led to increasing rates of child marriage and also female genital mutilation around the world. We have seen that women and girls have had increased caregiving duties thrust upon them, and they have been displaced out of the economic sphere in unprecedented numbers, reversing decades of progress that, you know, the women's rights movement was really proud of. And very alarmingly, we are also seeing huge rises in all forms of domestic on violence against women, including domestic violence, sexual violence, online sexual exploitation. Now, this is a dire picture, but I think that today is a day of hope, and we are very lucky to be joined by 4 amazing women who I will introduce, who will discuss each of the topics that I mentioned above. So first of all, we have with us, let me introduce the panelists and then we'll start the discussion. We have with us Yasmine Wafa, who is the co-founder and executive director of Rights for Girls, which is a DC-based human rights organization focused on issues around sexual exploitation of girls. Yasmine's work has, among other things, exposed the widespread criminalization of girls of color in the United States, and she's helped ignite a movement to decriminalize survivors of gender-based violence. So welcome, Yasmine. Our second speaker is going to be Carla Maria Morales Divas, who is a Guatemalan expert working at Paz Joven, a Guatemalan NGO that fosters youth civic engagement, and Jovenas Latidas, a pan-Latin American network of women's rights organization. Welcome, Carla. We have also Ifra Ahmed, who is the founder of Ifra Foundation, which has the goal of eradicating FGM, female genital mutilation, in Somalia and around the world. And she also serves as the gender advisor to the Somali government. Welcome, Ifra. And last but certainly not least, we have Anya Bernshall Tolonen, who is an assistant professor of economics at Barnard College, and her work explores the economics of health and gender in developing countries. She has a particular focus on girls' education. So that being said, it's an amazing panel, and I'm going to start with one big question to all of you. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your work and what you are seeing in terms of impact of the pandemic on girls. So I'm going to start with you, Yasmine. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. And it's so wonderful to be here with all of you on International Women's Day. Here in Washington, D.C. at Rights for Girls, our goal is to work to eliminate gender-based violence against vulnerable young women and girls in the United States. Our work primarily looks at and focuses on the intersections of race, gender, violence, and how too often this fuels the criminalization of our most vulnerable girls, including our girls of color. Of course, it has to be said that the communities that we work with and on behalf of were already incredibly marginalized, but they're also the communities that have been hit hardest by the pandemic. And so some of the things that we've unfortunately witnessed due to loss of employment and wages, housing instability, food insecurity, the fact that girls have lost and been interrupted from their school where they receive many supports like access to meals, access to safe adults and counselors. All of these things have really exacerbated the vulnerabilities amongst our girls. And what we have seen, it's no surprise that what we have seen have been real increases in family violence, child exploitation, child sexual abuse, as these tensions in families have grown and these stresses have really become much more difficult and untenable. But we've also seen the ways in which this has led to an explosion in sexual exploitation and sex trafficking. Particularly here in DC, we've noted marked increases in family-based trafficking. We have had instances of many children here in our communities who are being exploited by their families. We have had instances of children themselves calling our local child abuse hotlines and their child protective services requesting for removal. Of course, due to COVID, we have seen a halt at the foster care level in our child welfare system here of being able to remove children from households where there is extreme abuse or exploitation or neglect. We've also seen, as a result of COVID, a virtual halt in placement options. And so that has become incredibly difficult for us to be able to get girls out of unsafe situations, unsafe homes, and place them into situations where they feel safety and have opportunities for healing. Some of the other things that we have noted in terms of sexual exploitation is that here domestically, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has noted, I think, about a 27% increase in online reports to their cyber tip line, including almost a 98% increase in online enticement alone. So what this tells us is that, you know, these periods of extreme isolation and online screen time, which I think many families and especially women and mothers have had to rely on, mean that girls are being exposed to online exploiters, sex traffickers, and so we've seen the levels of grooming and enticement really rise. And the last form of sexual exploitation that we've noted in our work here, again in DC, as well as through our partners across the country, has been the rise of landlord-based sexual exploitation. So predatory landlords seeking to extort sexual favors from oftentimes young women, single mothers, in exchange for rent abatement or rent relief. And so these are situations that our organization is working to address, making sure that we are able to alleviate some of these conditions, and of course make sure that we are trying to get girls back onto a safe path and on towards healing.
Thank you. I mean, you bring up such great points about abuse in the home being the center of it. You know that we are all locked down with our own families at home, and the home then becomes all the dynamics of abuse that were already there, which I really believe it's because family is not an equal thing ever. And, Equality Now started a big campaign on equality in family laws this year. Because just to look at what's happening in the pandemic and what's happening to women and girls in the home. So I'm going to, and also the online exploitation, right? Because people are in their homes, stuck on their computers, and there are many good things about the internet, but there are also very many bad things. And I think that is coming to light with the online exploitation of women and girls skyrocketing. We've seen like Pornhub memberships have like skyrocketed across the world in this time, and people are viewing a lot more stuff, and that is a situs of a lot of abuse. So thank you for bringing all these issues on. I'm going to now go to Carla. Carla, what are you seeing in Guatemala? Because when we talked before, you were talking also about abuse of girls in the home and what that is leading to. But over to you.
Thank you, Yasmine. Yes, as part of Jóvenes Latidas, I want to share with you a little bit of what's happening in Guatemala because we are a network of activists from the region and we seek that all the girls, adolescents, and women enjoy all their rights, especially those related to gender equality. And we are really concerned because we have saw that unintended pregnancy is related with education, and in my country we have really high really high uh, numbers for the last year. So first of all, I want to say that this problem is also related with education. Many studies have already shown that a portion of school dropouts can be attributed to child marriage and early pregnancies. Last year, according to Ciprodeni, which is an NGO here in Guatemala, they were saying that 119,312 pregnancies were reported in girls and adolescents between 10 and 19 years old, which represents a rate of 11 pregnancies per day in girls between 10 and 14 years old and 10 pregnancies per hour in adolescents between 15 and 19 years. The combination of school closures and the disruption of the health services can translate to increase the likelihood of adolescent pregnancy, which makes getting back to classroom more difficult and it increases the risk of not concluding planned life. Pregnant girls and adolescent mothers do not tend to go back to school due to stigma, childcare, economic considerations, and the status of laws, policies, and practices that block their access to education. So we are especially concerned because those problems increase the risk of a child early and forced marriage in our countries, but it's also a region problem. So the pandemic risk is not only reversing the process made in increasing girls to equitable access to education, but also lead to increased incidence of pregnancy and early child marriage.
Thank you, Carla. I am very, very aware of the pandemic of child sexual abuse across the region and also laws and policies that don't support any kind of good measures, right? We've recently at Equality Now, we've had two cases, one in Paraguay and one in Argentina, about very young 11-year-old girls who have been made pregnant because of sexual abuse in the home. And then they have, because no access to reproductive health education, no access to abortion services, to put it bluntly. And those cases are before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to really look around the region of what we need to do. And I believe that during the pandemic, when people are locked up in the home, there has been a huge exacerbation of this issue of unintended pregnancies for girls. We've also had cases in Sierra Leone after the Ebola crisis happened there. Girls were out of school there, and when they came back, a lot of them were pregnant. And the government of Sierra Leone then, instead of saying that, dealing with why these girls were pregnant, banned them all from school. So Equality Now brought a lawsuit at the ECOWAS court against Sierra Leone, and we won that case at the beginning, in last year. We won that case, and now we have a similar case in Tanzania, where they've also banned pregnant schoolgirls. So the issue of pregnancy, first there's an issue of why is sexual abuse allowed in the home? Why is the government not doing anything about it? Then what are the consequences for the girls who actually become pregnant? You cannot have an abortion, you're banned from schools and all this. And this is, once you're pregnant and your education is halted, it's for life. So I think there are severe consequences that we will see for generations to come. So thank you so much for your work here. And, for being an activist. I think all of us need to stick together, because Yasmine and you have mentioned very similar issues, just in different contexts, also shows the similarity among women's rights activists. And with this, I'm going to go to Ifra now, who is from Somalia originally and is working on ending female genital mutilation around the world, in Somalia and around the world. So Ifra, what have you seen in your work and the impacts of the pandemic on FGM? You're muted. Ifra, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Yasmine, for the question, and happy International Women's Day. I'm really delighted to be part of this amazing conversation with a young woman and seeing young activists. It makes me really proud, because most of the time when we are in UN meetings and all that, we see, little older women who have experienced more about the old women. Seeing young activists talking about all these issues really makes me so excited and say, yes, young can do so much. Really, for your question about the pandemic, how it's affected in Somalia on female genital mutilation, I must say that COVID has not affected just Somalia, but affected the country where the FGM is highly practiced, including East Africa and more other countries where the FGM is practiced. For example, Somalia, last year during the COVID, we seen young girls being cut at home because the schools were closed. And now family, they have seen an opportunity that the school were closed, and that is the chance that to cut the girls. And same time, they could not take the girls in hospital because of the COVID, the government have closed in public hospitals, and they were only allowed anybody who's going hospital for the government hospital, where they checked on coronavirus and things like that. But in this case, we've seen the increasement of young girls dying for bleeding. We've seen also the pregnant women who became a laborer, who cannot access in health, who have died in the centers, for example, in personal displaced in IDBs. So we have seen so much, but we had as IFA Foundation, we had a quick response on that with Global Media Campaign, who are also the media activists. What we did is we raised awareness among to the women in this place and telling them that they shouldn't be afraid to go to hospital if there's an emergency need, especially when young girls are bleeding. And then also the women when they become a labor. And because of the chances were, because of the coronavirus, there was, the big healthy issues, and they never thought that it could affect it also within the people in IDBs. They might need to hospital and things like that. And that was the risks we felt that, there was an emergency crisis in displaced. And then also not only displaced, even when you look at districts, they were also practicing on FGM, because young as they go to Holy Quran from 8 age to above, and young girls who are cut are from 0 to 8. So even them, they see opportunity. The youngest are out from school, and it's okay to cut them. So we did a lot of response. We raised awareness within the community, not just on FGM, but also in the health of the COVID for self-protection and protecting for the loved ones as well. So I must say that COVID has affected so many lives in the globally, not only female genital mutilation, but again, FGM has forgotten. Even before it was too little, it was down to the least, but now completely it's forgotten. And young girls are still at risk on cutting and also bleeding to that. So, like if we talk about reproductive health, many women they had a fistula and there was no hospital for them to get help, and this is very dangerous time because many women are actually in bed for months and months and months without getting any help or any medical attentions. And shows the increasement of the health issues within the amount of women that are facing, if I talk in Somalia, because now we have a political crisis and everything it became a political. Nobody is seeing the women issue as important. So, and then again, all the UN agencies or the people who was working in grassroots, it became very difficult to actually use as a humanitarian and to support them because things have changed and shifted on because of the situation we are in now. So we are seeing lot of things, and I think if we don't act now, we will see the danger of many women are dying without knowing why they're dying.
Wow, Ifra, that is very powerful. And thank you for reminding us that in places where people are displaced due to conflict and all that, there are even bigger risk. And just by way of background, I mean, with FGM, there are so many health risks. Not even the practice is a human rights violation, but the women who have undergone it have serious problems in child delivery. And as Ifra mentioned, fistulas, and they need like care afterwards. And that is not happening because, as you said, everybody's only focused on COVID. So there are women in danger. There are girls who are significantly in danger because we have seen around the world rates of FGM rise during that time because schools were really a protective factor. And we had seen in places like Kenya, it was only in the school holidays that girls were at risk because they went back home to their community. And the recovery period from a procedure is somewhere between 4 weeks to 6 weeks. And if girls were out of school, that was possible to do at that time. So we were always alerted to rising rates of FGM during holidays. And now it's a perpetual holiday. So thank you so much for that. And I also want to point out FGM is not just an African practice. We published our global report this year of like countries around the world where FGM is happening. It's happening right here in the United States. I'm in the United States, and so is Yasmine, and it is a big issue here. And we actually just strengthened a law against FGM in the US just earlier this year. So thank you, Ifra, for that. And thank you for reminding us of all the other things that are exacerbated as a result of COVID, including displaced people and the risks that they face. So with that, I'm going to go to Anya. And Anya, I know that you're a professor, and your focus is you do a lot of research on girls and girls in school and education and sanitation. Can you talk to us about how your work has been impacted and what you're seeing?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jasmine. So, yes, I have a couple of projects working in East Africa, focusing on the access to sanitation on schooling outcomes for girls. Now, the kind of boring story is, of course, that because schools closed and it was increasingly hard to do any sort of travel, many of these projects stalled. Now, that means that we don't have as good understanding as we would like to have. And I think this is really important. I have heard reports from one study that my co-authors are doing in Kenya, a huge study on access to sanitary products and schooling, that they see rising teenage pregnancies, right? So this is an effect that many of you have raised. Now, the thing is, we don't know how common that is. And also, we don't really know what works to mitigate that. So, for example, in that study, providing cash transfers and providing some extra benefits, for example, sanitary products, could have a mitigating effect in getting the girls back into school. Now, but we don't know yet because unfortunately it's too soon to, have the results from these studies. But I do think the data is going to be very important to understand both the scope of the issues, but understanding the solutions to those issues. And I really enjoyed that you brought up Ebola before, because with the sort of recent Ebola crisis in West Africa, we did get quite good data on what happened to girls and their chances of getting back to school after these lockdowns. So we have something quite recent to learn from in one part of the world, at least. So I do think that has been instrumental in getting some sense of where we're heading as well. But it will be really important to get the scope of the issue as schools are opening up again.
Yeah, Anya, it's a really important point actually that you're making, that because a lot of work on women and girls' rights is more and more data driven as we try to see what are scales of issues and what strategies work. And if your research and what you're finding has been put on hold during COVID, that is setting you back, I'm assuming. And it's setting, actually putting in place the strategies to overcome also back. But very good point about even sanitation products and stuff like that, which is another aspect. I know Yasmine brought up food and meals that girls get at schools, and that's being halted. And you're bringing up like sanitation products were distributed at schools. And I know menstruation is a reason, like across Africa, a lot of girls miss school. And I see Carla nodding. So I'm assuming in Latin America and countries, it's also that thing. So there are other impacts that people don't even think about, right? When you think about COVID, you're like, oh, just they have people say from the pandemic, and yes, children are out of school, so there are mental health issues and all that. But there are all these indirect consequences that we are not looking at. And I'm so glad that all of you brought those up. So I'm going to shift my question a little bit now. So my next question, again, I'll go down in the same order, is from where you're sitting, I know we have an opportunity. Everybody says we are going to, build the world back now. And we would like to build the world back in a more equal way. Because I think all of us work shows that the world is a patriarchal world and we've all been struggling in different aspects of it. What are some of the recommendations that you have, whether they're at the community level, the country level, the international level, to help that effort? So I'll again start with Yasmine.
So we're working very intentionally here in Washington, D.C. with girl advocates. We have a D.C. Girls Coalition where girls themselves are on a leadership advisory board, and they basically dictate the policies that they need adults and policymakers to implement for them. So we are working very intentionally. We've held a series of youth forums, virtual town halls to make sure that girls' voices are heard, that they are, actually influencing some of the key decision makers around all of these issues we talked about: school closings and openings, access to basic necessities, increased funding for service providers and frontline workers. We are also working at the federal level to ensure that they are contemplating so many of these indirect consequences of COVID. And so urging for greater financial COVID relief for these vulnerable populations, also for prevention around, sexual abuse and child sexual abuse, sex trafficking. And then we're also working to strengthen some of our laws. You mentioned, the rise of Pornhub. We're also seeing several other virtual online platforms that promote sexual exploitation. So, these things like OnlyFans and so many other platforms that are being promoted, normalized, and really advertised across all media here in the United States. And many girls, vulnerable girls, are not realizing the risks and the harms. And the providers, the internet platforms, and others are just making extreme profits. So some of the other work that we are doing at the federal level is working to create greater accountability for those harm doers, for those profiteers, making sure, especially when it comes to the tech space, that there is greater accountability and transparency, that they're doing more to interrupt and not just detect and report, but to basically prevent sexual exploitation from happening on these platforms, particularly child exploitation involving girls. So those are some of the things that we are doing, but really it's just going to be a huge effort, I think, and that it's not going to be a simple fix. I think it's going to cost resources, it's going to cost lots of policy change, But I think, letting girls' voices and their needs and their, courage lead the way is what we've been doing. Girls know exactly what they need, and it's up to us to really follow what they're telling us.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Yasmine. It is like so critical. I always say, when in the past it was always older people talking about what is good for girls, right?
Exactly.
And girls are agents in their own sense. They know what the issues are they face, and they also know what could be helpful and what is not helpful. So like getting girls' voices into policy making is a key thing. I'm also like really glad that we have a new administration in the United States, which is very favorably looking at women and girls' rights and ending violence against women. And also the third part is like regulation of the internet, which is was always a taboo subject. It's now in recent years more and more in the center of policy agendas. We are also part of We Protect, which is a global alliance of governments, tech companies, and activists to regulate the internet to prevent harm to women and girls. So I think that that is something that can be a huge priority going forward, because the harm is immeasurable almost of what is done. So thank you for that. And I hope that you are as hopeful as I am, Yasmine, because it is an opportunity to get things changed and done. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So Carla, over to you. What are some of your recommendations as we build back?
Yes, first of all, I want to say that I completely agree with Jasmine. And since Jóvenes Latidas is a network and it's many of us live in different countries of Latin America, I would like to mention three main areas in which we are involved in different in different parts of the region. So the first one is that governments needs and communities also need to improve their community programs that are related to social development through amplifying the educational coverage. That I think that this is really important. It's really related with the statistics that I mentioned before. Secondly, I think that as a region and also as a word, we need to improve contraceptive concealing and delivery. In Latin America, many countries are advancing in many policies related to this, but others are not making that effort, and contraception is sometimes prohibitive, or access to it is really hard. And finally, although intended pregnancy is a major problem in the region, policymakers need to be more interested in preventing these kind of problems. I also support that girls and adolescents need to be heard, and we need to support their activism, and we need to support their advocacy. So policymakers needs to hear them.
No, amazing. And also you mentioned about efforts at the community level. And I do think that is critical, because you can have as much international or national policy, and the change for girls really happens at the community level, right? And better access to sexual and reproductive health education and contraceptives, and even termination of pregnancies is a key issue that we need to all work on, right? So thank you, Carla. I'll go to Ifra next. Ifra, what are some of your thoughts about the future?
Basically, I must say that our African leaders, this should not be only, the UN or international community should listen to us, but our African leaders should actually adopt that FGM as an issue. Once they accept the reality that we can win ending FGM, because now if you look at I just give you example as the president of Kenya. He was at the Women Deliver and he said 2022 he's ending FGM. Did he done anything since? No, he didn't even speak out. So I think this has to be reality, and we have to account them everything they're promising. So for me, for this year and more year coming, my campaign is that our leaders should actually take FGM on board. And I think activists, anyone who can make a difference, should make a a bill or request that the African leaders should actually take FGM on board. And I think that is the most important thing, because if you look at United Nations, if you look at international communities, they're all speaking out, they're listening. But my president, my second president, because I'm Irish too, I want you to listen. I want you to end FGM. I want you to know that female genital mutilation is a human rights violation. I want all African leaders to do so. That's my advice. And anyone who can make it different and change the mindset of the African leaders are welcome to do so. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Ifra, thank you for reminding us that we need leadership of African leaders, and we need, even though I said before, it's not just an African practice, but we do need African leaders to step up. And you're lucky you guys have the Maputo Protocol, which is the African treaty, and that puts in a provision of ending FGM. But what have the leaders done? What courage have they shown, and how has the prevalence rates gone down? No. Even if there are lots of laws now against FGM, the implementation of those laws is problematic, right?
Yeah. No, when I say the African leaders is that, for example, I'm in Ireland. If I go to the Irish ambassador in Nairobi, who is also in Somalia, she will listen to my voice. If I go to America and I sit for the UN Assembly, they will listen to me and they will take it to accountability. But if I go to my own country and I talk to my president, member of parliament, they will just talk and listen, and they say, oh, that is the issues. So this is what I mean when I say the African leaders, because they look good one day in the United Nations meetings and all that, but one day in their country they don't do nothing, and this must change it.
That is absolutely correct, and we should figure out if we can do an African-wide campaign targeting these leaders, right?
Equality now can do.
We can support you to do, absolutely.
Because you change a lot of protocols, and they brought it in, and I think those protocols, it has to be in action. It's existed, they have it, but it should not just be in paper on the table. It should be action on it.
Absolutely. And it has to be at the level of almost of like sub-regional, government, local efforts.
Yes.
We will talk after this and see what we can all do together. So I'm going to turn to Anya. Anya, I know your baby is adorable, by the way, and you should just bring her into the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, I would second everything that everyone has been saying already. Obviously, there's so many important things that we need to do. Sorry, he wants to be in the picture, maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi. Just to reiterate, I do believe that we have an opportunity. I'm sorry. We have an opportunity to do evidence-based policy making here, and I think we need to leverage that. I think I'll keep it to that.
Okay. Just to end the panel, I want to end on a hopeful note, because it is International Women's Day. So I'm going to give each of you 1 minute to talk about what makes you hopeful at this time. Again, starting with Yasmine.
So, I mean, I think what you said, the United States has gone through a very, intense period of just political division. And I think, we're on a much more hopeful path, as you said, specifically around issues of gender equality and, social justice. So I think having some of these entities at the national level committed and mandated to take these issues more seriously is certainly uplifting and a big change from where we've been. But I think, again, I come back to the youth. I think that is what energizes me. That is what inspires me. I think we are incredibly fortunate to get to work with young girls on a weekly basis and hear from them and learn from them. And so I think for me, that is what gives me hope. The next generation of girl leaders, of movement builders, they are so wise. They're so courageous and funny, and so absolutely clear in what it is that they need and the world that they want and deserve. And so I think for us, that is what grounds us and energizes us, and that is what gives me hope for the next generation.
Wonderful. Carla.
Yeah, it's almost the same to me. listening to girls and knowing girls who are doing really great advocacy, that makes me really feel comfortable with the job I do and with the job I lead. And also hearing those ideas that they have. I mean, the world really needs to hear them because they have clear ideas, they have great ideas, they have new solutions to propose. So I think when I hear them and when I'm with them, and in a really like kindly way, not just in the way that they used to teach us, like, okay, girls are there to learn from us, but in the relation in which we are able to learn from them, and they are free to show them how to do so many things or how to lead so many changes. That really makes me happy, and that really makes me believe that, yeah, it's clear this need to change, but with girls this is going to change. So that's what make me really hopeful about these changes.
Amazing. I think that is correct. I know Anya had to leave and she has a little boy, but our little girls and our youth activists are the reasons to hope. And turning to Ifra. Ifra, are you there?
Yes, I am. My big boss is up.
Your baby's up. Okay, well, this is well, can we see your big boss, or you're gonna just
No, my big boss, no.
well, what gives you hope, Ifra, if you can?
My hope is that as United Nations Resolution 2030 ending FGM, I want to see when my baby is 10 years old to end the FGM. Now she's 1. Next 9 years, my goal is to be part of the history that ending FGM. Her 10th birthday, we will be celebrating together, free every girl on FGM around the world.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. And she's clapping and saying, yeah.
Yes. So anyways, thank you guys all for being here. I just want to sum up and say, we have heard today how COVID, well, all these organizations were working on these issues before COVID. I think COVID hit and we have all been impacted very badly. At the same time, the world's focus has shifted towards the pandemic, towards, direct COVID response, and people are not seeing exactly the impact of COVID on women and girls, on advocacy around women and girls' rights, and also about the on-the-ground work that we need to do to ensure that we come back in a good way. And so I think that women and girls are going backwards, and girls in particular, who are our future, are being very badly impacted. So I would say the panel has done an amazing job, all of you, in showing everybody what the issues are and what we need to do to build back equal. It's going to continue to be a fight, but I think that governments and all of you who are watching this are an agent of change, and you need to give this priority. And I would say to you, as a call to action, you have seen all these amazing organizations. There's Rights for Girls, IFRA Foundation, Paz Joven and Jovena Latidas, and Equality Now. So if you want to do the least thing, you can just join us and join the conversation and see what each of us is doing and how you can help support us. But these are the youth leaders of the world, and the girls' voices are critical to bring up in deciding policy going forward. So with that, I'm going to end. And I want to say thank you to all of you. I know Anya had to leave because of babies. I mean, this is the other thing. We are all at home with our children. Mine are 20 and 16, so I don't have the same issue. But anyways, thank you. Thank you so much to all of you. Happy Women's Day, International Women's Day to everybody. And we will end it here.
Thank you.